So the next period we are going to discuss is the Baroque period, which ran from 1600 to 1750. It was also called the Age of Grandeur because everything was grand. Their clothes, their music, their architecture, their visual art, it was very grandiose. So the term Baroque was derived from the Portuguese pearl, or the Portuguese term called Barroco, which was an irregular shaped pearl. The period was the time of change and adventure. So as I've said earlier, Baroque art, it was pomp and majestic, bold of gesture and conception, vigorous, decorative, and monumental. So you can see in their architecture, in their buildings, very intricate details because they'll always cool. Being grand was cool that time. So that's Baroque period. Musical characteristics. What we have here is the transition from medieval church modes to major and minor tonality. So in the medieval period and in the Renaissance period, we've learned that they were more focused on church music and they didn't have any major or minor chords yet. They base their chants or their songs from church modes. So some of the church modes are Dorian mode, Phrygian mode, and they have different sounds. Okay, so in the Baroque period, they introduced the major and minor tonality, which we are familiar today. So when we say major, it sounds like this, right? And a minor is, so that's why our pop songs are based off of major, minor, major again. So it started during the Baroque period. Also, another characteristic in this era was that there was emergence of instrumental virtuosity. So a lot of composers used the harpsichord, that's the picture you see on the slide, and the organ. So if you've been to Siliman Church, we have one organ there. I'm not sure if that's the same thing they used also during the Baroque period. Another important characteristic in the Baroque period is the opera, which was first introduced in Italy. It has three basic singing styles, and it's mostly based off of secular music drama. So it's not based on any Bible stories. It's mostly about romance or anything that's not religious. So you have the three basic singing styles here. You have the recitative, the aria, and the chorus. So I have attached a link as well so you can differentiate the three. And I will also briefly discuss this later. The rise of opera saw the development of vocal technique. Okay, so if you think about opera music, you think of sopranos really singing their heart out, right? Singing loudly. So this was really prominent during the Baroque period. Also, there was the advancement or the rise of the castrato. So the castrato is a male soprano or alto singer who they castrate so that when they reach adolescence, their voices won't change. Because females weren't allowed to sing in church because only males were allowed to do that. That's why some of them were castrated, and even up until the day they would die, they still had high voices. So it was hard for them to actually find romantic relationships because some women don't like those types of guys. And I think that was their commitment also to the church, to be castrated and to serve the church through their voices. So most of the music here in the Baroque period were highly polyphonic, meaning there were a lot of melodies really sounding together, kind of complicated. Major and minor tonalities were introduced. Music was highly decorative because that's a characteristic of the period. So you can find a lot of trills, trills, in their works. You can hear a lot of those because they didn't have a pedal yet. So the purpose of the pedal, what we see in the piano, is to sustain. Because they can't sustain the note with a pedal, they just do a trill. You had imitative polyphony, so there's a lot of imitation, which was really important in their writing and in their singing and playing instruments. So again, the opera was first introduced in Italy, and it was really performed in big halls, theaters with elaborate costumes and props because everything was grand, right? So there was an orchestra, there are actors, and you have to really remember that it is secular. Okay, so the three singing styles, you have the recitative, which is half sung and half spoken. And there's an example I will show you. It's in the link. But if you've seen Les Miserables, like the movie with Hugh Jackman, what they do is actually a recitative. Then you have the aria, which you sing, just really sing your heart out. And the chorus, which means that everyone in the ensemble sings together. Also, the text of an opera and an oratorio is called a libretto. So it's like a small libretto. It's the text, it's the script in which the opera is based off of.